I know that Jill invited me to speak today to underline the fact that youth theatre is important for young people, regardless of what career path you go on to take. And it might seem a little strange that if you've read the pack or had a look at my bio, that my focus is on losing. The title of my speech is Why Losing Doesn't Matter and Why Youth Theatre is Important. You might also think it's a little bit ironic that I'm training to be a doctor and I'm telling you about losing, because a doctor losing's got quite nasty connotations, really. But I hope it does all become clear. I found it very difficult to write the speech because I haven't actually been involved in youth theatre for about 4 or 5 years now. But I do believe that it's incredibly important. It's been incredibly important to me about how I got to where I am now, how I've done what I did as a teenager, and also the impact it's had on my friends and the other people that I know that have been involved in youth theatre. I started when I was 8. I just moved to York, and my family were living in a single room while we looked for somewhere to live. I couldn't have friends home to play with or anything like that, and youth theatre was one of the few opportunities that I had to get out, meet new kids, not take them back to my pokey little single room, which they'd find a little bit odd, and probably not like me because I didn't have any friends and didn't have any cool toys. So I really found it useful, and I'm still friends with the people that I met at that youth theatre group, and I'm 24 now, and I was 8 then, so we still meet up. There's a dental hygienist, there's 2 psychologists, there's 1 person who's an artist, and everyone else is doing different things. And you wouldn't have that amount of cohesion in a group if we'd been at school or anything like that. We'd all have drifted apart. And I stayed a part of that youth theatre until I started assisting at workshops. Jill gave me a job looking after 8 to 10-year-olds, which she probably still regrets. And I also ended up working for the youth service, helping to run a city centre multimedia youth project, which is the first one in its kind. And I think I learned more from doing that than I would have. I think I would have learned more from the young people that I was working with than they learned from me. But I wouldn't have had the confidence to engage with young people as a youth worker or as a youth theatre leader if I hadn't had those early years of youth theatre. The jobs I loved, and I'm very sad to have left them behind to actually end up being a doctor, but there are compensations. And it also gave me an insight while working as a youth worker into what many journalists and Daily Mail writers call youth, or the youth of today. I believe that young people live in society at the moment where losing or winning really matters. Losing has devastating consequences for many young people. They can fail their exams, they can fail to meet their parents' expectations, they can fail to perform for their school football team, fail to play the music right in a concert, fail to sing a song correctly in a choir, they can fail to wear the right clothes, shoes or even hairstyle, fail to impress their friends or even another girl or a lad. Today young people, they're driven to perform and are increasingly afraid of failing because of this. And many give up, and I'm sure we've all seen this. They close off, they stop trying because they're afraid, because they don't want to try, because they're too worried about not getting it right. What's this got to do with youth theatre? I mean, there are loads of youth theatre practitioners in here, so they already know the answer. It helps combat that fear of failing, that fear of not being able to do things, because it rehearses you for relationships, for real life, and it's a safe environment to do that. I've seen countless children and teenagers when I've been running groups and as part of groups who are so paralysed because they're worried about not being funny or not being creative that they felt that they couldn't make up a story on the spot. And as a drama leader, there's a skill here that you can use to convince them that they can. I was thinking of doing some audience participation here, but I think Jill will shoot me. You ask them to guess a story. You get them there in front of you and say, okay, well, if you can't make a story, I've just made one up on the spot, but you can't. I'm only going to give you yes or no answers to your question. And you get them to guess, and so they'll ask you, oh, is there a dragon involved? Yes or no. And you just basically decide on the whim whether you're going to say yes or no. And they will build a story. After you've done this with them, and it's generally nice to tell them that you were playing with them a little bit and they actually made up the story themselves, you'll see an amazing transformation in most young people. They respond with shock, then they're proud that they've actually made something so original up. And then they'll go away into their group work and they'll be more engaging, they'll offer up more ideas, and they'll build on the ideas of other people. Again, if you're not involved in youth theatre and you're here, talk to the other youth theatre practitioners here, because they'll tell you that this has happened over and over again. So, what's losing got to do with youth theatre? Why is it important? I liked to play theatre games when I was a youth theatre practitioner because I found it just as much fun as the kids did. And when we played these games, I told them the term game was misleading because it's not about winning or losing, it's about the experience of the game itself. You weren't playing to be the best or to be the winner at whatever game that you were playing. You were playing to give the audience, which was generally speaking their friends, a really good time and make them laugh or make them enjoy themselves. And it was the taking part in the game itself that was the important thing. And if you watch people who play these games, you'll notice that you get the biggest laughs and most enjoyment when people are kind of at the edge of their performance level and then they kind of screw up a little bit. And it's very amusing and everyone enjoys it. It breaks the tension incredibly and it breaks the ice as well. And it's more fun when you mess up a little bit as well. Again, there's a point about medicine which I will make in a second. Losing in a safe environment allows young people the freedom to try, to explore and experiment new things. It lets the shy ones try being confident for the first time. It allows them to experiment with emotions, beliefs and ideas that they're only just becoming aware of because they're growing up. It allows them to play different roles, literally stepping into someone else's shoes. So they find out what it feels like to be a bully as well as a victim, to understand what it feels like to be a father as well as a child. That's teaching empathy, and it doesn't happen anywhere else in the school system. And it's incredibly important to what I have to do on the wards every day. And to understand that losing isn't the end of the world, because you get up and you try again. Almost to enjoy it, and to enjoy playing, because again, youth theatre is one of the few places where you see 24-year-olds running around like lunatics and still playing like children, and that's incredibly healthy. So learning to lose is an important life skill, I believe. Now, as a student doctor, I'm surrounded by people who are in the top 2 or 3% A-level and GCSE-wise. They've always been incredibly clever, and they're used to being top of their class. Now, when we get sort of taken around the wards and we talk to patients and things like that by professors and consultants who are all quite scary and they're all in suits and looking really quite intimidating sometimes, they're so frightened of asking something stupid or appearing a little bit silly or a little bit unsure, that whenever a consultant asks them a question, sort of, which side of the atrium is that, they'll look like startled deer. And I'm sure it's sort of like a reaction which, when you've got someone who's critically ill on a ward, you can't have that reaction. It's actually very, very dangerous for that to happen. So because of my experience of youth theatre, I treat the experiences differently. I'm perfectly happy to go up to my consultant and go, okay, I really don't understand what you're saying. Can you explain it again? And they're perfectly happy to tell me. I've got no problem as well being a little bit silly with patients. Now, again, that may sound a little bit odd. And, it doesn't get you struck off. But it's about, I'll give you an example from yesterday. I was going around the ward helping out with the jobs, doing an ECG, which is an electrical tracing of the heart, and a chap who just had a stroke. And another medical student came up to me and said, he's completely uncommunicative, you won't get anything out of him. I was like, well, fine, I'm putting wires on his chest and seeing how his heart doing. I don't necessarily need to talk to him. But when I went to see him, he was paralysed because of his stroke. But you could tell that he was still working up here. And so I had a conversation with him. I told him a few jokes. And I was the only person in that ward round, including a consultant, 2 nurses and a phlebotomist, who could actually get him to say anything. And that's what I'm trying to get to, really. The fact that I'm not necessarily going to listen to someone else's point of view if I think that someone can talk to me. And I've got the experience and the confidence to be able to go, well, no, I'm going to try and talk to them anyway. Because if I was in that situation, empathy again, I would want someone to chat to, even if it was just a little bit light-hearted fun while I'm contemplating the rest of my life.